I'm Lucy Wainwright Roche.
And I'm Suzzy Roche, her mother.
And you're listening to KAOS Olympia,
the best radio station in the country.
We're under the many, we're over the one. Surprised to discover that we're standing next to none.
Scorpions, beetles, alien ant farm. There's no shortage of insect-themed band names, but for me, it doesn't get any better than the Roches. Hi, I'm Mark Lee Morrison, and today on Low Profile, come for a ride down Interstate 5 with Suzzy Roche and Lucy Wainwright Roche as I talk to them on their way to the next gig on their West Coast tour. Suzzy is 1/3 of the Roches, a group of sisters whose records since the 1970s have been creating fanatic enthusiasts around the world, myself included. Her daughter Lucy has released several killer solo records in the last couple decades, and their new album, I Can Still Hear You, is the third that the two of them have made together. This one's an especially big deal for me because I'm a huge fan of the Roches and their extended universe, including Lucy and her siblings Rufus and Martha Wainwright, and their dad Loudon Wainwright III. Here's one of my favorite songs by the Roches, though. It's called Losing True. It's from their album Keep On Doing. Earlier this year, I took my family to see Suzzy and Lucy perform in Seattle, a few days before recording this interview while they were on the road. And today we're talking about the Roches' legacy, including being among the first to earn the classification folk punk, Suzzy and Lucy's experience collaborating remotely on an album that was meant to happen in a Nashville studio, their balancing of humor and sincerity in their music and lyrics, the adjustments necessary to incorporate Roche's songs into their set, and Suzzy's most recent novel, The Town Crazy. Because this was recorded on the go, we'll just bear the speakerphone fidelity and enjoy the stories from this exceptional mother-daughter duo. So, I'm speaking to Suzzy and Lucy?
Yeah.
Y'all are on tour for your most recent album, I Can Still Hear You, right?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, we're sort of just rebounding from the pandemic, and trying to go to places where we
We're supposed to go 2 years ago, but never did.
How's this new version of what you used to do all the time?
it seems sometimes it's very familiar and sometimes it seems very new and different. I think everybody's been through a lot. So, I think the audiences are reflecting that.
That theme is very present on that record in particular.
Yes, well, it really was a pandemic record. So we were in the very heavy throes of it in New York City when we made the record.
Right, and you were recording it remotely eventually?
Yeah, we started in Nashville, but then the pandemic came, and in one day everything was canceled. So we just kind of set up recording studios in our separate houses and recorded the rest of it that way.
Do you think you still got the record that you had in mind going into it, or did you wind up with something totally different?
Interestingly, most of the songs were written pre-pandemic, and we didn't know, obviously, about the pandemic, and somehow they became infused with their own pandemic tints. So it seems, I don't know what you would say, but I feel like it seems now like they became what they were meant to be.
When I hear it reminds me so much of what was happening in New York at that time, simply because we were recording it during that. And it was a real, motivating factor in the midst of all of that. To have this project to work on was really helpful.
Did you get what you wanted from it production-wise, or do you think you made sacrifices there? I'm not sure what you guys were planning for in Nashville.
Yeah, we were going to go back and forth to Nashville to work on it, but it definitely changed because we couldn't do that. And so I spent a lot of time in my apartment playing different instruments and things, and also we did it in a studio in New York, some of the stuff, and we also did it out in somebody's house. We mixed a lot of it out in somebody's house. So it was really seat of the pants. And of course, it was a different record than we started out making, but there's nothing unusual in that because I think that always happens.
Definitely. So you mentioned playing multiple instruments, and y'all are from a very talented, extended family. I'm like, how many instruments do y'all play between you, and what are your favorites?
This is Lucy, and I only play the guitar.
Okay, great.
I'm just keeping it as minimal as possible.
No, that's dedication.
I mean, I really only play the guitar too, but out of necessity, I had to play a lot of different, parts. I mean, I'm used to sort of hearing different parts, from working on harmonies and stuff like that. So
Sure.
I can pick things out, and also production-wise, I like to be able to hear the notes that each instrument is playing and stuff. So, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah,
So it doesn't
absolutely.
have to be complicated, it just has to have the right notes. And necessity is the mother of invention.
So you are a mother-daughter duo, and Suzzy, you're most widely known for your trio with your two sisters, the Roches, with Maggie and Terry, who have sadly passed in recent years. What was that, 1979 with the first one?
Yeah.
With the three of you? And your sisters had one without you before that. What was that all about?
You mean, how did that one before the Roaches happen?
Well, why not Suzzy yet?
Oh, well, I was just a kid, I was, a teenager.
Uh-huh. How much younger are you than them?
Oh, 20 years. No, I'm about 3 years younger than my sister Terry. But
Okay.
they were also young.
I made the mistake that a lot of people probably do with that group, was right off the bat, the first time I heard it, I was like, oh, okay, it's like a quirky folk trio. This is cool. And then you slam us with the Hammond song, and it's just like so otherworldly.
Come on, you're lying to me.
thanks in no small part to Robert Fripp's guitar playing and production, I don't think there was really sounds on a lot of recordings from that time that sounded anything like that.
Yeah, I know. He basically, there was very little production on that. Even in, he wanted us to sound like we sounded when we were singing live, and we were always a live band. But it's interesting the point you make about, we had always had a funny side to us, and
Sure.
but also we're very serious. And I think it's unusual for people to combine those two things, and as a result, oftentimes when you have a sense of humor, people kind of marginalize you for that. But actually, that is the way life really is. So it's tragic and funny at the same time.
Did you feel like you were pigeonholed as a folk group? Because when I when I listen to the song Nerds, right, from the album of the same name, that sounds like something that would have been happening at CBGB's. It's like New York punk to me.
Right. Well, we were right, blocks away from CBGB's. We were sort of, some people were referring to us as folk, folk punk.
When I was a young girl, I went to Catholic school, hung around all the nuns, that was so uncool. All the other girls were wearing makeup in 4th grade, but I was not allowed. I wore anklets and prayed.
We also had a theatrical quality of what we were doing is many layers, not only just musically, but in the content of it. It could be taken on many different layers. And I think, again, a complexity is not something that is easily understood, especially now where everything is like a one sentence thing, or but there are many layers to the way I see it, to what the Roches did, and also to what Lucy and I are doing.
Yeah, and Lucy, so you never knew a life where your mom wasn't in a band. She was
Yeah.
all the way in it when you were born.
Yeah, definitely. I grew up really with traveling with them and being with them a lot of the time. So that was a constant, always.
And at the show I saw recently in Ballard, it came up that when you were little, you just assumed you were a part of the band.
Yes, I don't remember that, but it sounds kind of annoying.
I was kind of surprised at the volume of laughter that came on when you played the Swan Duck song. I mean, these lyrics are cute and they are silly, they are funny, some of them. It's a mix though of funny and serious, but people at the concert were acting like they were at a comedy show.
It's interesting. It really depends on the town.
Yeah?
Who laughs at what, how much, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, sometimes,
You don't get a chuckle out of it.
Yeah.
but-
Yeah.
And often it happens in our shows. It's like you're playing for your friends,
Yeah.
And I think part of that is because Lucy and I are in the same family, so it's very familiar, and that kind of translates to the audience. And I think it's interesting for people to see a mother and a daughter, standing on stage singing songs. It's not that usual.
I went to the pond today looking for the swan, but the swan had turned into a duck. Tough case, bad luck. What happened to the long smooth neck, elegance and grace? Bad case, of dug face. Couple of feathers strewn across the grass. The duck looked up at me, afraid to ask what happened to me. I fumbled for the words to say, well, something had to give. It's what happens when you live.
The Roche's last album came out about 15 years ago now. As a trio, have you thought about that? Listened back to it since then?
You know, I really haven't. I tend to not go back and listen to things that much unless I have to relearn them or something. You know, a record is exactly that. It's like a record of a certain time. And we've made so many records at this point. It's like, I don't even, it's a strange thing, you know, to go over. And each record has its own set of circumstances and people, and, you know, so it's almost like once it's over with it. Because you listen to it a million times when you're making it. And then, you know, you never want to hear it again.
Yeah. And then you continued to make solo records, and you did a couple more with Maggie, right?
Yeah, we just kept going. I mean, what's weird is it's a very big body of work. And then, of course, Lucy has also made a bunch of solo records. And
Right. That started, her first one came out the same year as the last Roche's record, if I'm not mistaken.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, it was kind of a beginning of a new arc, the transition, I think. Yeah, and so Lucy's got, 8 records out, I think?
Yes, well, I put out 3 solo, full-length records, and then 2 EPs before that, and 1 with my sister. That one is the theme of that record is all dark lullabies. So it's mostly cover songs, and it was definitely an outlier because we just had never worked together before. So it was an interesting collaboration.
But it's also a very beautiful record. It really is.
Yeah, we'll have to play something from that right here. Is there a song you think I should go with?
Well, one of the darkest songs on it is a Richard Thompson song called End of the Rainbow. I like that one a lot.
Your mother works so hard to make you happy, but take a look outside the nursery door. There's nothing at the end of the rainbow. There's nothing to grow up for anymore.
Rainbows. Your song Double Rainbow.
We just relearned that song, actually, yeah.
Really? Yeah, on Fairy Tale and Myth, that album. That, I think, is probably, before I heard the latest record that you guys did, that was hands down my favorite song that you two have done together. And I was wondering if that's based on a true story or if that's just a narrative, and if you want to talk about that song a little bit.
Well, it's so interesting that, you know, somebody else was saying that they really liked that song, and we relearned it and played it at a concert that they were at. But yes, it is a situation of a couple of stories that collided with each other. When I was a tiny child, my parents had a painter come over to the house and paint each one of the children's portraits. And it was a very traumatic experience for me because I was so incredibly shy and I could not bear to have somebody paying that much attention to me. But it was a very significant experience for me because I think it was my first interaction with an artist.
Huh.
And,
Okay.
he was very kind and gentle with me. And the picture that he drew I was crying in the picture, and I still have it actually.
Oh, wow.
When I was just a little kid, a strange guy came to visit. He had a drawing pad. He was a friend of my dad. Ma, come knocking on my door. Somebody's here to paint your picture. I couldn't figure out why. I began to cry. I don't wanna be looked at, don't wanna be seen, don't wanna be painted, don't wanna be blue and green, if you know what I mean.
There was something just very deep about that experience as a very young child, and I realized that I had started thinking about it when I walked through a museum and I saw another painting by someone from India. I forget his name, but he was a schizophrenic person who died on the street, but he made this very exotic painting that really struck me. And I just started to think about how many of my most meaningful experiences in my life have been through art, one form or another.
Yeah. Wow. And then you took that moment that was immortalized once and immortalized it yet again with more art.
Yeah, it all seemed to relate, and I figured that song was just too obscure to mean anything to anybody else, but I'm glad to hear that it meant something to you.
Well, I'm just a sucker for storytelling, and when you can, the difference between just like a pop song and a song that, tells a narrative, you've got a real gift for that.
Well, I think you just hit on something interesting about our show and Lucy's show by herself and also the Roche's shows. I think that the whole thing is based on storytelling.
Yeah.
And it's basically the story from the beginning song to the end of the show. It weaves into one story. It's maybe a little bit, the narrative may be a little bit circular, but it does actually, it's communicating something.
Well, speaking of storytelling, I just read my first Suzzy Roche novel, The Town Crazy.
Yeah, what'd you think?
Man, it's a real page turner. I mean, it's just like this book for people who aren't big readers. It's kind of like watching TV. It's really engrossing, and you just have to like go to the next episode every time a chapter ends. And yeah, it's about a community in a small town. At the center of it, there's an artist and his child who have moved in from the big city. There's a whole bunch of families, and they're all kind of like trying to figure out what's going on with each other. There's some behind the back stuff, rumors, and then what I like about it is that it goes from all the adults in the town and just like sticking their nose in each other's business, and then the side story, which is kind of I felt like was the main story a lot of the time, about the children in the town. And
yes, see, I really wanted to write children who seemed like real people.
Yeah.
Often children get marginalized in fiction. They barely get mentioned and stuff, but the children are definitely very, prominent in the book. And I think also that childhood is can be a very frightening journey.
Yeah.
And very little is explained to you about what's happening.
Well, the kids seem like they have the most insight sometimes.
Yes, well, I mean, often, I don't know how you felt, but when I was a kid, I felt that I was perceiving an enormous amount, and I just wasn't articulating it that much.
Yeah. Yep. I
Now, like when you were talking about your daughter coming down to the dressing room, like that experience of her walking down those stairs into the dressing room and seeing those blueberries and asking to have one and having one, that had probably had such a resonance with her that seems for adults almost like nothing, you know.
Yeah, she's gonna think about you guys whenever she eats blueberries, or whenever she hears your music, she'll get hungry for blueberries.
But also, you just don't know. Like, I think it's a great bringing kids to things like concerts. I think people tend to keep their children away from things that are happening, and it's such a shame because if they're right there with you, they're having rich experiences. But that's just me. I mean, as a person who Lucy was with me a lot, through a lot of things I did.
Yeah. One specific thing that I really found enjoyable in that book, and it wasn't a big part of the story at all, was just that the kid Felix, which we also have a son named Felix, but his dad just allowed him to paint all over the walls, like whatever artwork and stories and stuff he wanted was just covering the walls in their house. And I could see myself in there, like my daughter Lulu, the one who liked the blueberries. If she has drawn on the outside of our duplex across the next door neighbor's door all the way over to ours, and just like she owns the place, and
yeah, well, it's an interesting thing, that character, that little Felix in the story is, he, on one hand, he kind of considered, a spoiled brat, but on the other hand, he's tortured in his own little life, so it's complicated.
Well, yeah. Are you in that book?
Me?
Yeah.
That's a good question. None of those people in that book exist in any shape. I don't know how I've written 2 novels. I mean, it's a very weird thing because you are imagining these people. Like you said, it really is like a movie, that book. I feel like I just was sitting there and it was happening visually in front of me, and I'd be walking around the streets and all these people who don't exist were doing things that they did in the novel. However, at the same time, I think it's in some ways the most autobiographical thing I've ever written. And I can't really explain why that is. I think maybe because childhood is, like shards. You only have shards of memories. And so it's the essence of those memories that you're trying to express, For me, when I was writing that book, it was like a lot about the place that I grew up, and not a lot about, none of the people were real, or none of the things that happened in the book happened in my town or to me. But something about the essence of the book has a lot to do with me.
Yeah.
Mysterious.
Wow. Yeah, well, I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading your other novel and maybe finding a copy of your kids' book for my little ones.
Oh, yeah, right, the little kids' book, right. That was a sweet one, too.
Yeah. You ever think about getting into acting again? You did some movies?
Well, I do work, regularly with the Worcester Group in New York City, who is a world-renowned theater group, avant-garde theater group. And we've traveled all over the world.
Oh, wow.
I travel with them, and so I do still work with them. And as a matter of fact, I'm just about to start another piece with them in the fall. So, yeah, I do. My thing has been to just say yes to everything.
Okay, that's your
Because
secret.
I feel like one thing informs the other, really, and I like being around artists too. So, I've been very lucky to have a long, steady career of doing interesting. It's not boring, I'll tell you that. Sometimes it's a bit harrowing, but it's not boring.
Lucy, are you able to keep this lady focused on the music while y'all are touring?
Oh, I think she's the more focused one. So that's certainly not a problem, but it's just something you can't get sitting at home. And so the show becomes more and more fun the more together it is and the more we kind of settle into what we're doing. So that's we're in a nice place in that way because we've been doing the shows for a little bit here now.
She actually has a life as opposed to her mother.
That's not true.
Well, it is kind of. It's one of the most delightful things about traveling with her is that I get to live vicariously.
Yeah. What all do you have going on these days, Lucy?
Oh, I'm not sure what she's talking about. But I bring a lot of podcasts to the table because I like to listen to podcasts. So we pass the time that way, and there's lots to discuss. And
yes, we talk. We agree vehemently on certain subjects, and we talk about them. After we listen to a podcast, and then we dissect.
On this show, I have had an artist that the Roches covered, Gretchen Christopher from the Fleetwoods. Come Softly.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And we talked about your version. She's a sweetheart.
That's a beautiful version. Maggie singing that song.
Yeah. And then, another guest I've on this same season, Steven Steinbrink, he does a really beautiful cover of I'd Love to See You.
I heard a beautiful version of that song. That's one of my favorite songs that I ever wrote. But I don't like the recording that we made of it. It wasn't, but I heard another cover of it, and it's a song I would like to re-record, actually.
My favorite Roches moment in recordings is in one season when it just goes into all those dissonant harmonies. It's just like, you guys, the three of you had like this insane blood harmony thing going throughout all of your records, and then you guys somehow just got it to clash on this crazy weird chord.
We go on arguing. No one can say a thing. Set down your key and trumpet. Go have a dream and hump it. I've got to get away from you.
Yeah, we sang, the melody against this other melody that was, what you would call clashing, I guess.
Yeah.
But yeah, we do that. We do that in our show now too.
Y'all are doing that song?
Yes, we did. Oh, you missed it because you had to leave. Oh
my God, I'm so mad I had to leave early. You guys have had to figure out a completely different approach to harmony.
It's a very different thing doing two parts than three parts, because you're not really completing the chord when you're doing two parts. But when you're doing 3 parts, you must establish a chord. So it just has a different sound to it.
Prize fighter with Bruce Bright. A fuse blew when you tried to fix the worn out wire and set the house on fire. I've got to get away from you. If only for a day or two. You don't know what you put me through. I'll come and visit you in the zoo.
It's still got the blood harmony thing that is just, I think, you don't get if you're not related to the person. There's a magic there.
Yeah, there are only a couple, a lot of times people ask us if we would cover Roche's songs, and that's a hard ask because they were so reliant on 3 parts, and that really made them what they were. But there are some that we've been able to learn, and One Season is one of them that we have a version of, and I'm so glad because that's one of my very favorite songs, period. Not even very favorite Roche songs, but just in general as songs go.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can listen to that anytime. Well, I'll have to catch you again to hear it live. Are you going to do some more solo touring after this?
Yeah, I will be. I'm kind of planning into the end of the year and next year. In the spring of 2023, I'll be back out on the road, hopefully. And yeah, it's great to be back. It's also, I was away for about 200 days a year before the pandemic, and then surprised the pandemic. I was home for all that time, and I think that maybe being gone for 200 days a year is crazy.
Uh-huh. You're going to scale back a little bit?
Yeah, it may need some adjustment, but I'm certainly planning to keep on going.
Is it always exclusively solo, or have you done touring or shows with bands before? Like a backup band?
I've only had a backup band when I play in New York, solely because of how expensive it is to bring people with you.
Sure.
But I've done a lot of touring as an opening act for the Indigo Girls, and that's really fun because then during their show I get to sing in their band, which is about as close to a rock band as I'm ever going to be in. So
yeah,
that's a fun thing.
Oh wow, what's your favorite tune to sing with them?
Oh man, there are so many songs that I love, but one of my favorites is a song called Devotion. That's one of my favorites to do live with them.
Are you working on any new records?
I'm hoping to make another solo record, at least write it in the rest of this year, hopefully, if I'm lucky, and then see what happens after that.
Being on the road as much as you say you are, do you find it easier to write on the road? Or like do songs like pop into your head when you're not expecting them, or do you make a concentrated effort to create a body of work?
Well, this is back with Suzzy again. I think I can easily speak for both of us to say that it's impossible to write on the road. I don't know how anyone can do it, you know. Um, it's writing seems to be a whole separate thing, you know. It seems to require solitude and eh, stretches of nothing, and you know, and you're always, it's kind of an act of faith because you never know that if you're going to get something that you like or not. You know, it's similar to writing the novels. You know, you don't know what you're doing really, and you're hoping for the best.
I've definitely had songs come to me like behind the wheel, and then as soon as I get where I'm going, I just grab a paper plate or something and scratch out what I can remember of it. But
I've had that also, but usually it's a headset for me, like if I'm in a writing period, that happens more often. I don't know why it's like that part of my brain kind of turns off when I'm on the road, you know.
sure, yeah. Well, we were talking about your cover tunes. So It's Not Easy Being Green is on the new record and sung by a famous puppet, or a Muppet rather. Are you a big Kermit guy, Suzzy?
I like that song very much. I've liked it for years, and I think it's interesting. So many people have covered that song. I think it really has struck a nerve in a lot of different people. And there's a lot going on in that song that, you know, of course, it's another example of that. You know, it's sung by Kermit the Frog, and so it's kind of like a novelty thing, but it has incredible depth to it. And
yeah.
It's simple, but it's profound.
It's not that easy being green, having to spend each day the color of the leaves, when I think it could be nicer being red or yellow or gold or something much more colorful like that. It's not that easy being
Joe Raposo, who wrote that song, I think he certainly had that gift of, you know, again, writing for children to me is one of the most freeing areas because you can say a lot more. Like, for example, E.B. White, you know, who wrote Charlotte's Web.
Yeah.
And, you know, like those books, or Stuart Little, which there's a song on the record that's written for that story. When I read Stuart Little as an adult, I was shocked by the depth of sadness that is in that book. And it's a children's book.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel, again, like sometimes people want to shield their children from those kinds of feelings, but they, you know, children get very sad from time to time. And it's nice to be able to, or they get scared, or they get, you know, confused or whatever. And I think it's a very fertile place to write for children.
It's true. And you know, I don't really think of that as a novelty song. It's got volumes to speak.
Yeah, and it's very soulful and kind of, it's a lonely thought that, you know, someone is having when they're sitting by themselves.
when green is all there is to be. It could make you wonder why. But why wonder? Why wonder? I am green and it'll do fine. It's beautiful and I think it's what I wanna be.
I wanted to play for the listener the title track from I Can Still Hear You, but before I do that, maybe a few words from Lucy on the song?
Sure. That song was the one song that I wrote by myself on the record, and I wrote it right in the middle of when New York was totally shut down those first couple of weeks when the pandemic started. And honestly, when I wrote it, I thought it wasn't really much of anything and we might not be able to use it, but it turned out to be fitting for the whole project.
Did you write that kind of after the rest of the album was already written?
Yes, it was probably the last song that got written for the record. Yeah.
From all of the people below and above, to all of the things we need to be careful of. From that was a near miss to where do I sign this? I can still hear you.
When you are making a record, you're not really sure what the end is going to be until it's over, and then you say, "Oh, I see what this is about." You know? Kind of like a photograph coming into itself in a dark room. You know,
Yeah,
it sort of presents itself to you.
it's the final reward. I just wanted to mention I really enjoyed the deep cut Beach Boys song that you chose, "Day in the Life of a Tree," that you did with Maggie not that long ago.
Yeah. That's a strange song, but
is.
it's also very deep song.
Yeah, it's a very it's like kind of a disarming tune.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
One day I was full of life. My sack was rich and I was strong. From sea to tree I grew so tall. Through wind and rain I could not fall. But now my branches suffer and my leaves don't offer poetry to men of song. Trees like me weren't meant to live. If all this world can give, pollution and slow death, oh Lord, I lay me down. No lives left to be found. There's nothing left for trees like me aren't meant to live. If all this world can give, pollution.
You know, the Beach Boys, when I was a young person, I didn't realize the brilliance of it. Again, I thought, oh, they're just like a surfer band. But no, they are brilliant. Musically and the songs, I think they're amazing.
Yeah, the stuff that they were doing when the Roaches were starting out, I feel like, it was kind of kindred spirits in some ways.
Yeah, well, they had that family thing going on for sure.
Is there anything you guys are looking forward to about getting back home after this tour?
It's always fun to get back home until you get to New York and remember that you're in New York. And it's summer and it's hot and it's not as... we really, we were in Ballard. We were really struck by the beauty up in the Pacific Northwest, and it was a real literal breath of fresh air for us to be there for a few days.
Yeah, I was so glad that y'all got to come visit this area. And kind of at one of the nicer times of the year, if you don't mind a little rain.
Oh, it was just breathtakingly beautiful.
Well, it's been a real honor to have you guys on, and thank you for giving me some of your time.
Thank you for having us on and for bringing your family to our show.
Yeah. It was great to meet all of you.
Yeah, well, break a leg, y'all.
All right.
Be safe on the grapevine.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Mark Lee Morrison here, and you've been listening to Low Profile. We just heard my interview with Suzzy Roche of the vocal group The Roches and her daughter and collaborator, Lucy Wainwright Roche. If you'd like to find more of their work, you can find some relevant links on this episode's page at lowprofilepodcast.com, and most good record shops too. Next time on Low Profile, I'll be sharing my interview with the Oakland-based artist Steven Steinbrink, recorded almost a year ago. I'm going to play you out on his cover of the Roches song I'd Love to See You, mentioned earlier in today's show. Hope you like it, and catch you next time.
Still